Okay, hello and welcome. Welcome to GFNY Day 2022 Europe. We're delighted to have you with us. GFNY Alps Vaugeny is on its way next week, and GFNY just completed Bali 2 weeks ago, the 100th edition of GFNY, which is amazing. And even more amazing, the GFNY Europe calendar is in flight and expanding. And so we'll discuss that along with our distinguished panel of organizers a little later on. But first, welcome to this GFNY Day Europe virtual conference. A few things to note in the interface. Our panelists will be on the center stage, and we will also have some video here right in the middle of the area of the screen where you see me right now, where you just saw the video play. In the lower right hand of your screen, you can see that we'll be publishing some polls as they are topical throughout the broadcast, as well as providing you an opportunity to ask some questions. So please feel free to hit us up with questions as we go. And also there is a chat interface. So if you just want to give a shout out to somebody else that you see online, feel free, but let's keep it friendly and appropriate in the chat and the questions so that everybody enjoys themselves and gets the most out of this today. So this has been a banner year for GFNY with so many races already in the finish column and so many more to go. Southern Hemisphere is about to take off and carry the GFNY calendar through the fall and winter through Southeast Asia, Mexico, South America. They're ready to take the reins from what's winding down summer in the Northern Hemisphere here in the last 4 months of the year. So the good news is more races than ever, more places than ever, more chances to create a GFNY experience that you'll never forget. So today, we'll let you know how to ride your first GFNY, what's on the calendar. And if you stay tuned over the next the next 12 hours now, I started this a few hours ago. We'll also start to explore what's happening in the USA and the Americas, as well as Latin America. If you want to see all of this content in Spanish, you can do that. So we'll be exploring throughout the day what's on tap as in Europe and the West as 2022 comes to a close and 2023 kicks off. So hopefully you've gotten your ride in today. So stay with us. Let's have some fun. And let's celebrate. So I'm going to bring a few people on here. And just would like to introduce you to our first Europe panel, which consists of Nicola Hebsgaard, who's a cycling journalist as well as a great cyclist himself, who I had the pleasure of meeting in GFNY Cannes. Marie Fabreau, who I also met in GFNY Cannes, who is a cycling vlogger. Shane O'Rourke, who's a multi-finisher for GFNY. And we were supposed to have Ben Bram with us, but he is not with us or not on the stage yet. So I'm going to see if I can get him on there. In the meantime, we are so happy to be kicking off our GFNY Day 2022 panel discussions here in Europe, where it's just after 2 p.m. Central European time. We have a panel of GFNY riders and one coach. Ben is the coach, who are going to talk about their first GFNY experiences and how to prepare for your first GFNY, and provide some pro tips for everyone out there hoping to learn how to make the most of their first GFNY. So we did this already in Southeast Asia this morning or late last night, depending on where you are, and it was a really nice discussion of some really great pro tips and pro hacks on how to do things like travel with your bike and how to train for your first race, what to expect, and how to get ready. So, gang, so happy to have you all here. If we could go around and maybe just hear from each of you, maybe except for you, Ben, because you're going to take more of the coaching angle, what your first GFNY experience was and what your expectations were going into that race. So, Marie, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today and to talk about this amazing experience. So my first GFNY was really interesting because it was my first race of the season. So I had some high expectation on this race because it will involve for the next races coming this year. And last but not least, it was also the first edition in Cannes. So it was really important for me to be part of this experience. And how I train myself, well, it was a bit hard because, as I said, it was the first race coming at the beginning of the year. So I started my training plan with my coach, who built me a full cycling plan, not only for this race but for the whole races that I plan to participate this year. So we started, I think it was in November last year. So basically 4 months before the first race, and the program was made regarding my last year performance, my objective regarding this race, and also regarding my planning, my capacity, my abilities to make my planning, because I'm working by side, so I have to combine both the cycling plan and the personal life. So we train like this for this first race.
Great. Moving over, Shane, can you tell us a little something about where and how your first GFNY experience was?
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Chris? I'm having some
We
connectivity issues.
we can. We read you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my first race was GFNY New York in 2015. At that stage, I was probably 70% a runner and 30% a cyclist. It's kind of switched around now. So I suppose my expectations or my hopes for the first race was just to get around and survive. I had done distances, being able to pace, make sure I got around, enjoy the day as much as possible, and really, I suppose, just experience. You know, I wasn't there for a time. I wasn't there to be pushing up the front and trying to win anything. It was in a new part of the world, cycling with different people, cycling in a huge group, and really just enjoying the experience. That was really my goal.
All right. We're really fortunate to have 2/3 of the 2022 New York City podium with us right this second. So I think since you're here and we can see you, maybe I can throw to Hannah and Jill. You know, you must have had a first time with a GFNY experience. How have these differed from other races that you've been involved in over the years?
Hannah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can do so. Okay, my first GFNY was basically 2018 in Hameln in Germany, in the north of Germany. And it was one of my first races, road races ever. And after this year, I became more professional and I got a team and did more international races. And therefore, it was a race where I discovered my love for cycling and my passion for cycling races. And yeah, it was really great, a really great experience. Yeah.
So I probably only came in about 3 hours behind you in Hamlin that day. So
Yeah.
so you have that going for you. Jill, how about you? Your first one was 18, 19?
2018 New York. And I had raced road races before that were long, but not quite at that distance. I think maybe 60 miles most. So that distance was definitely a challenge for me. And I had no idea what to expect with the mass start and just racing with so many people. So it was kind of like I felt like I was thrown into it. I learned a lot that first year, and then the second year I feel like that first year had really prepared me. So the second year I was able to do a little bit better because I went into it knowing what it was going to feel and be like.
Cool. And then just going all the way around, Nikolai. How about you? Which one was your first GFNY?
My first GFNY was also the German one in 2018, and that was an incredible experience. I live in Denmark, so it was quite easy to just drive down to Hanover and Hamlin to participate. And I remember at the start in the morning, we were in the front grid and we could just see all these motorbikes in front of us, and the entire day was just like riding like a pro, because you had closed roads and great weather, and everything was amazing. So as you can see in the background, I have a couple of more jerseys and medals from GFNY, and I just got a taste for it, and just had to get more of that GFNY experience.
All right, Ben, as a coach, and we'll turn this to preparation and hear from the group. But what's your approach to somebody that comes to you, that one of your coaching clients that comes to you with a plan to do something like something as challenging as this? What's your approach to setting their expectations? I think you're on mute, Ben. There we go.
There are a lot of things you got to think about. It's Marie Fabre also said you've got to find a good balance between your training and your personal life, social life. Sometimes you've got to work. So it's finding a balance. One, and two, it's start not too late. It's often that some cyclists make a plan within 2 months, but that's too short to training well. And that's what Jill also said. Often the competitions are 60 or 70 mile, but now it's a little bit longer, and you've got to training well. And when you take one of the first GFNYs, for example, when you take Cannes, then you've got to train in winter a lot of kilometers. If you're living in always warm conditions, that's no problem. But when you live in Holland or in Belgium, it's not so easy to train long distances in February or March. So that's very important for the coach to say to the athlete, and it's also important for your planning. So for me, it's important to motivate that the athletes stay motivated, and for that it's also important that you make a choice together with the athlete. Which GFNY are you gonna participate? And when you talk about preparation, I always take between 4 and 6 months for a complete preparation for a GFNY.
Cool. Magnus, how about your experience with first time, or your experience with just the preparation? How was it that you were able to figure out the right training the first time that you did one of these?
Yeah, my first race was 2017 in New York, and I got my bike when I turned 50, so I just had 3 years, been riding for 3 years. I've done a few races in Sweden and one in the Alps before that, but I actually don't remember, but I read somewhere of this GFNY in New York, and I was really excited about it, so I turned up for that race, and I've been training quite good. I had some coaching with some training plans, so I think I was quite well prepared, but a bit too excited maybe with the start on the bridge there is overwhelming, and it's so great, and I raced in a small group there, and we were pushing really hard, so I really had to suffer the last 20k. So that's maybe one thing you can learn from. That you have to pace yourself. It's a long race, and the New York race is also, it's constantly up and down, and especially the second half after you come up to Bear Mountain there. I mean, going the way back there, it's really a challenge, and it's a long distance. So you really have to pace yourself all the way.
Yeah, and we're gonna get in depth with the GFNY NYC race a little later on in this show. So I'm glad we have so many that have completed the New York City race. What is it that brought everybody to GFNY? What made it stand out, or how did you all find out about it? We can go around in the same order. Marie, if we want to maybe start with you.
So to be sure to understand is what pleased me in the GFNY in the race.
Yeah, what was it that got you to sign up for a GFM for your first GFNY?
Well, first for my part, since my first GFNY was in France and in Cannes, and it was the first edition, so I was really happy and enjoyed to be part of this first race and to promote it and to talk about this race around my siblings, my mates, etc. To get involved them into the adventure. And second, I do it in my cycling ways to show that even if if I am a woman, it's possible to participate to this kind of this race, because the women are not represent enough in this kind of race, and I wanted to show that it is possible. The organization is made for everybody, and I was not lost in the race, meaning that I were able to find some people who get the same level of cycling as I got. So it was not easy, because the race is never easy, but it was possible for me to be part of this and to show that it's possible. So to resume, that what is important to me is to communicate about that and to get more and more women, young girls, to be involved in this kind of race and of long distance race.
Excellent. Shane, if you're able to hear us, what was it that got you to sign up? I know you said that you were more runner than cyclist, but what was it that made you pull the trigger on actually signing up?
Honestly, it's a personal connection with Uli and Lydia. I've been friends with Uli for a long time. We were runners together in Ireland, and then he got me kind of into cycling. So when he moved to New York and set this thing up, it was kind of on my bucket list to do. So yeah, it was that, and also I was potentially looking at setting up a GFNY Ireland with Uli at the time. So I was wanting to participate, and B, potentially looking at it as a race organizer too.
Excellent. And Nicola, you've been writing about cycling for quite some time. Was this something that you discovered as part of your research and things that you were writing about, and just being able to participate and write about this type of a challenge?
Yeah, nah, it was actually more like I was searching for something different than De la Marmotte in the Alps, which is very popular in Denmark. And I came across, obviously, the New York event, which is, I think everybody knows about the Grand Fondo New York. And then I saw this in Germany and thought, hey, I gotta try this because it looks similar to the New York event. And once I did that, I was just hooked on the franchise, or what you call it. And then I were in Vushani in 2020, and it was kind of like the same experience with regards to organization and parcours and everything. And now I've done 4 and doing my 5th on Sunday next week. And so far it's been kind of the same experience each time, only the parcours is changing. You get the jersey, obviously, and it's always great organization. And now I've done 3 GFNY France races, and it's kind of like a family party with Cedric and his friends, and Tiffany and Lydia and Uli. So it's kind of like coming into a big family, and it's it's a big event, but it's down to earth, which I really like, because in other events like Etape du Tour or La Marmotte, it's people always on edge. But in GFNY, it's very it's racing in the front, but it's kind of more in a casual way, and it's really nice atmosphere. So I think that's what's really brought me in.
Excellent. And then Hannah, in that race in Hamlin, how did you find that? How did you decide to take that first step?
Oh, for me, it seems it's already a long time ago. And I have a boyfriend, and his brother lives in New York. And he did, I think it was in 2015 and 2016, he did New York Gran Fondo in New York. And he told me that it's an amazing experience. And so he told me to do it in Europe again. And so Hameln was a great opportunity to try out this experience. And yes.
All right. I was at the 2016, well, N15 race, and there's an argument about whether it snowed in 2016. And Uli, I'll tell you, it snowed and it changed me. So that's it. Jill, you had been racing. You had started racing when you were in Japan, and you came back to the States and started racing here, and found it to be very different in the States. But how was it that you discovered GFNY?
So yes, I had been living in Japan and knew sort of the race scene there. And then I moved back to America and really didn't know anything about the race scene, didn't know what Grand Fondos were. And I had been riding with a friend, and he told me, he was like, oh, you would love this Grand Fondo. It's the perfect race for you. It's the type of cycling you enjoy. And I was like, Grand Fondo, what's that? And so he was the one who introduced me to GFNY and kind of started this whole snowball of after effects. And I fell in love with the Grand Fondo format, and especially GFNY.
All right. So, and then finally, Magnus, how did you find it? You were living in Sweden at the time that you did New York, and you were able to figure that all out.
Yes. I mean, I write for a Swedish magazine, and I was looking for a race and that was exciting, and somehow I found this GFNY in New York, and it sounded really cool. I mean, I've been to New York before, but just as a normal tourist, and I love the city, so I found that it's going to be an exciting race, and something that was that we could do an article on, and so yeah, that's how it started.
Great. So for each of you, what your expectations of the course were in your first one, right? So we've had some not insignificant climbing on some of the first courses. You know, the Germany course was about 2,000 meters of climbing. The Cannes course was just under 2,000 meters of climbing. NYC, of course, is about 2,000 meters of climbing. So that's not insignificant. An amount of climbing to do over that distance. So going in for the first time, all at different experience levels in cycling, which this is the beauty of this panel, is that everybody's sort of at a different level. What role did the expectations or your expectations of the course play in your mental preparation? I think that, Yogi Berra said 90% of this game is half mental. So what role did that play? We'll start with you again, Marie.
For me, this race was like a test for the year coming, because it was my first competition this year. So it was a way for me to test myself and to test my program, to see if the work we've done so far was good or not, or if we had to adjust it. Because as you said, in Cannes, the parcours was about more than 100 kilometers for 2,000 meters of climbing. So it was really challenging for me, because climbing is not my strength. So yes, it was a way for me to test it and to adjust the program for the year. And regarding the result, I was really proud because it it reached my expectation, but I went beyond my expectation. So it was really positive for me and for the rest of the season, because it made me myself confident in my coach, in my program, and in my way of working the cycling. So it was really good and challenging for me for this first
And
time.
how did it go? How did you feel at the end? Did you feel like you finished strong, met your goal?
Yeah, it were really well at the beginning. Well, since it was the first scan, everybody was really exciting about it. And at the beginning, I remember everybody was how can I say that, at the top of the max. The first climb, everybody was at more than 100%. So at the beginning, I was a little bit afraid to say myself, well, okay, if the race will gonna be so hard for the rest of the day, it's gonna be hard. But then after the first climb, everybody calmed down and it were more easier. The second difficult was the not the weather but the temperature, because in the south of France, even at the beginning of the year, it was really warm, so it was difficult to handle the temperature. And my husband was also part of the race, but he had an accident, not so important, but I saw him with the medical care, etc. So I was a bit stressed, but he told me to continue the race because it was fine, etc. But it was hard to return into the race, I mean mentally, and to be focused on the end of the race. But at the end, I made it, and it was really good because the organization was amazing. I think it's Nicolas told that, but when you see the motorcycle, the cars, etc., you really feeling like a pro. So it's it's amazing.
Let's go over to Nicola. What was your preparation as far as the course was concerned? Did you study the course profile relentlessly, or was it something that you thought, well, I can't control it, I'm just gonna go and
No,
do what I can do?
we studied the parkour, the long distance and the climbs. A few months before the race, we were not able to go to the south to practice it, so we made it at home. We are living in Paris. There is not so much climb, but there is always a way to train it, even inside with the training cycle or outside, by made some repetitions. So we build a program based on the strength and climbings and repetition. And so it was the small exercises, and then we also practice regarding the long distance. But as I don't remember, sorry, somebody else, when it's cold outside, because I start my training in November and December, it's always hard to get involved regarding the cold, etc. But since I've got my objective, meaning to succeed for this first race, we have to keep this objective to be motivated and to succeed for the race.
Okay. Nicolas, how about you? Did you study the Hamlin course just relentlessly, or did you just sort of let it happen?
Yeah, I always study the course. It's nice to know when the climbs, or how long they are, and how steep. But in Hamlin, it was a circuit race. So you got to see the circuit one or two times, which was nice because you didn't have to look that much on Strava and everything. But in GFNY Grand Ballon, I didn't study the route that much, so I was a little surprised when Matthias van Aken told me it was actually more than 110 kilometers race. But luckily, I had the sticker with the climbs on my handlebar, so I could see we had how far we were in the race. So I always try to scout the route on Google Maps, perhaps, and always on Strava to see what time to expect up the climbs. In Cannes, it was quite easier mentally because most of the climbing was in the first 50 kilometers, so you could break it down mentally. And I think that's important when you do these big races, especially in the mountains, because I live in a flat country, so you can't train climbing as per se. So to getting around the route mentally, it is important to do the preparation by looking it up beforehand and checking on Strava and the GPX files on GFNY.com. So yeah, from now on, I always look up the route beforehand.
Okay. Magnus, how about you? Did you put a lot of thought into the route itself before you came to New York?
To be honest, not really. I mean, I realized this was a lot of ups and downs, but I didn't look too close to it. Maybe a mistake, and I had to suffer in the end there. But the year after 2018, I did the GFNY in Colombia there, where there were some more constant climbing, and there I looked more into the course there and what was expected there. So, and going to France next week here, looking forward to that. I also need to have a closer look at the climbs there and what is expected there. So try to pace myself better this time. I mean, otherwise you will be in real trouble there if you go too hard in the beginning.
Okay.
So,
and Hannah, how did you prepare that way, or were you too new to racing at that point to worry about it?
Okay, the first race was in Hameln for me, and normally I live in the south of Germany, and I think I love climbing, and I think the mountain there are similar as in Hameln, so it was not so challenging for me that after 2018 I became more professional and I did a lot of professional women races, but unfortunately the climbs are not longer than 10 minutes. And then in 2020 I did GFNY in Vaujany, and there it was really challenging to climb Le Col Croix de Fer over 2,100 meters when the air gets thinner, and on the top of that there were really bad weather conditions, and they had to shorten the course, and this was a really challenging experience for me the first time doing a race in the Alps.
Will you be going back next week?
No, unfortunately not, because I do a stage race in Italy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Jill, did you think about the course before you tried it the first time? I'm sure that I'm sure that you looked at it the second time. I'm quite sure, because I think you've told me that. But on the first go around, did you really take a hard look at the course?
Oh yes, I knew exactly what I was getting into. I studied all of the climbs. I looked at past times on Strava for the women winners, and I sort of knew the watts that I might have to put out. And my first question was, is this even realistically, like, can I compete in this? I knew I could complete it, but I didn't know if I could be up there riding with those top women. But I knew my watts and I knew my power, and I actually knew, yes, okay, I do have a chance of doing well in this. So I did go in knowing sort of, to do well, what will I need to do? So I was planning for that. And then because I live relatively close, like maybe 4 hours away from New York, I actually did go up and ride the course once before that first race. And so that was super, super helpful. So I kind of knew what was coming. And then I did study my competition through Strava. So I sort of knew their strengths and weaknesses to a degree. So I tried to prepare for as many variables as I could. But of course, with racing, there are some variables you can never know or prepare for.
Yeah. and you focus on the things that you can control, as we say.
Yeah.
Nicolas has just let me know through the chat that he will be in Vaujany, returning to the scene of the crime next week. So probably getting packed as soon as we end this call, I'm guessing. So with all of that, and with two of you on the call, I forgot before, Jill, that you're also a GFNY coach. Both you and Ben are coaches. Let's just do a whip around. We've got about 15 minutes left of what you would tell somebody that's doing this for the first time. What's the, Jill, let's start with you. What's the first thing that you would tell somebody that's doing a GFNY race for the first time?
Kind of along what Ben said, you really need several months to prepare for this. I would say 2 at the very minimum, and even that's pushing it. Depends what you've done leading up to those months, but really start thinking way ahead of time, and then just try to train what you're racing for. So if your race has a lot of long climbs, you need to be out doing, you don't necessarily need to be doing climbing if you don't have it, but you need to be doing it at sort of an intensity that you might climb those mountains at a similar cadence. Just try to replicate the conditions that you're going into.
All right, Marie, what would your advice be? I'm going around the horn.
Yeah, I agree with Jill. For instance, in my case, I was not able to practice in climb, so we simulate that kind of effort I will have to reproduce during the race. But I totally agree. I think getting a training plan is essential to to arrive prepared and to be sure that you won't collapse during the race, to know your limits, and to also be able to to repeat the effort you're training for.
Excellent. Ben, anything that you want to add to what you had said before about what somebody needs to get ready, a first timer?
Yes, in my opinion, it's very important to prepare the mental thing, because it's very important that you train in groups, because it's, for some people it might be really scary to ride in a race the first time in such a big group, especially when you see crashes around you, and you have to be able to handle your bike. That's really important. And it's not 100% overtraining, in my opinion. It's before, I think you should do a lot of training rides where you do 5 hours or 4 hours, approximately the length of the race time. And I think that it's really enough, but it's really important to train in groups.
That's something that we really haven't touched on, which as a first timer, you maybe don't understand that concept of conserving energy through the group. Ben, Bram, what do you tell your clients typically about how to work with a group so that they can conserve their energy for the most difficult parts of the course?
The first important thing is I sometimes in your preparation to train in greater groups. That's very important, so they can estimate the behavior of a great group of riders. When you always ride alone, it's very easy, but when you ride in group, like Hannah said, it's not that easy. But Chris, I want to add something to the question from a few minutes ago.
Please.
I think it's also important for a coach when it's a very hilly ride. What I will do with the athlete is to make. I don't know how we said that, but you're gonna take the whole ride, every climb, and at every climb you're gonna say what's the maximum power or maximum heart rate is gonna maintain. Otherwise, it's a story of very hard ride on the first climb, and then it's over. And that's not so when you as coach gonna analyze each climb, and you're gonna talk with your athlete. That climb, it's so long. You're gonna not over that power or that heart rate. That's also very important. The steering for a coach of a coach for an athlete on a hilly parkour that he is not that's not so easy.
So making sure really that you don't blow yourself up.
Yeah. So that's very important, and it's more important when it's the first race is going to do with GFNY. The first race for an athlete as a coach, it got to be a great experience. When he blows himself up on the first climb, he never gonna participate again on a GFNY.
Yeah.
So that's very important that you are a good guide for your athlete in the preparation.
Excellent. And then Shane, from somebody that was just, you had mentioned that you were just looking to get around the course in that first time, 30% runner or 70% runner, 30% cyclist at that point in time. Looking back on that, if you met someone like you that was, mostly new to cycling, but not new as an endurance athlete, what would you tell them about what you learned in your first time?
Yeah, I think for me, it was around respecting the distance. So, I knew it was going to be a long, challenging day. So really what I tried to do at the start was conserve my energy. And, Ben had talked about cycling in a group. So I really tried to make sure I got into a good group that I was able to contribute to, that wasn't pushing me too hard, and that I stuck with that group for quite a while. I do like climbing, so once I hit Bear Mountain, then I kind of opened up the accelerators a little bit and kind of went up Bear Mountain pretty well, and struggled a bit like Magnus. Then I paid for that towards the end with those short, sharp climbs that come in towards the end. But yeah, I think the key thing for me would be around pacing yourself, not burning all your candles, in the first 30, 40 kilometers. As a marathon runner, I've often seen people just going bananas for the first mile, 2 miles, and then dying at the end. And I really didn't want to have that experience. I did to some extent struggle towards the end, but I got there. So it's really about conserving energy, using it in the right places, and having enough to get you across the line.
Excellent. Magnus, what would you say looking back to a first timer?
Yeah, as everyone has said already, I mean, you need to get the hours on your bike. And I live in Sweden. I have no problem with the cold. I'm training all year round, and I'm in the wintertime I use studded tires. So if it's snow, no problem. I go out and ride. But the problem is the darkness. So I do the long rides on the weekends. Usually when I start in the morning, it's all dark. But yeah, then the light comes. But then during the weekdays, I train indoor. So, but yeah, you somehow need to do the hours and not just a month or two before. You need to be longer than that. And also maybe one thing I haven't touched upon, I mean, during the race, you need to eat and drink a lot. You got to get your calories there. So otherwise you will also suffer.
That was something that got touched on quite a bit in the group that we had for this topic in Southeast Asia, was the nutrition and hydration. That's sort of I don't know. I'll go to the two podium dwellers, Hannah and Jill, about how that's a learned skill. The nutrition piece, the hydration piece is sort of a learned skill. So Hannah, let's start with you. How did you learn that skill of nutrition and hydration to keep going?
I think I learned it by my trainer, by my coach. And he said that it's important to eat regularly and always every hour. And for me, it's about, I think, between 60 and 80 grams of carbohydrates per hour. And so I do it with gels and with sugar in the bottles. And yes. And sometimes,
Excellent.
especially when it's very hot, I've got problems with heat because in Germany often it's not so hot, and therefore I add a lot of salt, and that to avoid cramps and something like that. Yes.
Okay, Jill, how about you?
It is definitely a learned skill, and I knew that it was going to be very important because you can really have great fitness and then sabotage it all with poor nutrition, and you don't perform well, and you think, oh, I didn't have the fitness. No, maybe you just messed up the nutrition and hydration. So I did practice it in the months leading up to that first GFNY. But it was really hard because it was like winter training and I had big gloves. So I actually couldn't really eat on the bike. So I couldn't fully practice it. And I was trying different foods, solid food, liquid food. And I practiced with solid food and that was fine in training rides. And then lo and behold, I get to the race and I find that I feel almost kind of nauseous because of nerves. And so all the food I had practiced really didn't work. Luckily, I had a backup and I had some liquid nutrition that first year. And I ended up relying solely on that. And for these longer races, I do believe like solid food is great. But for me personally, as much as I try year after year, race after race, I cannot get solid food down. So I just have to rely on the gels and things. And it's very hard. And I find that as I'm getting older, my body's also changing and what it needs is changing. So it's not like you can find what works for you and then it's this magic solution for the next, X many of years of racing. Like, no, conditions vary, intensity varies. So it's really honestly something I continue to struggle with and I continue to try to refine, and I'm always trying new things. So, but it is so, so important. And you do need to start training that along with your physical fitness the months leading up to the race.
Okay, and let's close it out with Denmark. Nicola, what's your advice to a first timer?
I would say to sit in, stay on the wheels, and stay on top of nutrition. That always worked for me. So I think my first GFNY in Germany, I came second actually, and I was just sitting on the wheels until the last climb. And I had studied the route beforehand, so I knew where the water stops would be. And I also seen that they would be handing out bottles to the first riders. So I made sure that I would be among the first riders at each feed station. So just could grab a bottle on the go. And that can be quite tricky for a long and warm Grand Fondo if you don't know where the water stops or the food stops are. So yeah, stay on top of nutrition and sit in the wheels. Jill's a nice wheel to sit in.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for participating in this today. We'll be back in about 5 minutes to talk about the GFNY Europe calendar. So we'll have Lydia and Cedric, and Jill will be back with us just to talk about what her experience was in her sweeping tour of GFNY France this summer. And so I want to thank all of our guests today and stay with us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And we are back. Welcome back. We're lucky to have our European organizers with us. Lydia Flume, founder of GFNY, Cedric Haas, organizer of GFNY France, and the champ Jill Patterson, just back from a highly successful tour of GFNY France experiences. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Gang, let's talk about what makes Europe so special and so perfect for challenging yourself in GFNY races. Over the last 5 years, I know that I've gotten to see just about anything and everything that Europe has to offer, and I'm hungry for more. The beaches and the hinterlands of Cannes, the majesty of the French Alps, the challenging constant steepness and beauty of the Pyrenees, the mountains, the seashores of Italy, Portugal, so on. But enough about where I've been. Let's talk about what we've seen these last few months as GFNY Europe is evolving and what we can expect from the calendar moving forward. So let's go. Lydia, let's start with you. What do you have? What do you have for us? What's on tap?
Obviously, always a lot of work getting put into establishing the future calendars. We've got, an amazing 2023 season lined up in France. We're working on bringing back Portugal, getting a date back in Cascais. We're working on bringing back GFY Italia. Hopefully, it can still happen in 23. Otherwise, it'll be in 24, and maybe even with 2 destinations in Italy. And we've got, of course, incredible GFY Uppsala in the land of the Vikings. Also, really a spectacular course going through nature, and really the majesty of the magic of feeling the amazing history of the whole region. And I mean, like hundreds of years of history where you're really surrounded by this nature. And let's see, always working on many things. And I think at this point, many projects are 2024 projects. So stay tuned for always more information coming up. But I also want to hear from Cedric and all the work that he's been doing this year for the races and where everything is going in 23.
Yeah, Cedric, 6 races in France this year. You've got Alpes Vaugeny coming next Sunday. First, how is the planning for that going? And how has it all gone in France this year so far?
For now was incredible year. It was just unbelievable to take part of to organize 6 races in France with a beautiful place. We started in Cannes in end of March. So that was amazing for the first challenge to come on this beautiful place in France. After was another challenging for this race. We organized everything with my team only in 3 months. After I think was a beautiful race, yeah. And this way will happening next year again at the same date, end of March. After big challenging for us is Villard-de-Lans, Tourmalet, La Vaujany, Grand Ballon, et voilà, Alpes Vaujany next week. We are already here for prepare everything, and that was just an incredible years. If you want, with beginning with Cannes, Villard-de-Lans with the beautiful Vercors for wide. After you have Tourmalet, Lourdes, with a beautiful place too, with the beautiful Col Aspin on Tourmalet, and the week after is Alpe d'Huez climbing was just amazing. I'm very proud to be organized for all this ways with all this beautiful place in French, and after, my last one organization was in my home, Grand Ballon, with beautiful Vosges again. What a very hard race too. And now is for finish the season for French is with Vaujany, voilà, with a Croix de Fer, Glandon, and Retourne, will be amazing race again. And we working, so far for 23 again, but yes, was just a big challenging. I can just big congratulations for all of my team too, because it was very, very hard to manage that. The most things at the end is everybody is happy, and I think our guys can grow up little by little, but we work for that with passion. That's the things.
You had very, very little room to relax between March and basically the end of next week, right? So you've been just going. It was March, and then it was May, and then it was June, and then it was June again, and you just kept on going. So as you've done that, the courses though that they evolved to be as challenging as putting on 6 races, right? So I mean, just tell us about how those courses get mapped out. That I mean, with the each of them has somewhere, well, except for Cannes, has between 3,000 and 4,000 meters of climbing. So how do you map that out, and how are the cyclists, how are the athletes loving the challenges that you're bringing them?
Yes, after we have a different challenging. Yes, we start with a little now. It's almost 2,000 meters climbing for the first one, but after, yes, it's first challenging. We have different distance for each race. We have the medium and the long route, and after we have, if you want, we start in Cannes with 2,000 meter climbing with a race less 120 kilometer. Yeah, after the big one was with kilometer was Villard de Lans with 165 kilometer, and Tourmalet almost the same. And with a medium, the most long medium was in Tourmalet with 100 kilometer. You do it, But after, we have different challenging. And the most important things for me is for each people in French, you have now with 6 ways, we have 4 beautiful places. We have 2 races in Vosgenie. After you have the Vercors, you have the Vosges, we have Pyrenees on Alps that is just can make a lot of choice. With calendar is open all the year. We're starting in March and now it's end of August.
So it's take a couple of days off after the race next week and then back to work.
Yeah.
Jill, this was your first time racing in France. How did you find the experience to be different than what you've experienced in the US?
The climbs are much longer and there are more of them. So I've climbed in the US. I haven't raced on climbs like that in the US, though on just sort of like vacation training rides. I go out to Colorado, and that's somewhat similar. But what I think was really cool about France is that the climbs I've done in the US of that length, they're at elevation. So you're above like 6,000 feet, usually 9 to 14,000 feet. So you're really struggling with the altitude where I've been climbing in the US. But in France, you get that altitude gain, but you're not actually up that high. So, the air isn't as thin. So you can actually put in a little bit more effort and have enough oxygen. So that was a new experience to me. And my pacing was a little bit different because of that. And that was kind of exhilarating to be climbing so much, but not actually at such a high elevation.
Right. And what did you find that was different about the caliber of cyclists that you encountered there, the caliber of competition?
Definitely super high level. Everyone's used to climbing there. They're really good at descending. So I definitely upped my game on that one. I followed some good wheels. I learned a lot. I burned through my rear brakes way before my front brakes and learned that I'm very rear dominant and I need to use my front more. So just the skills, I would say. The level of the riders, I think they're more used to those long Grand Fondo type of rides. So it was definitely challenging because of that.
And then what about the travel? This was some pretty extensive travel. What hacks did you learn that you'd like to share with everybody about traveling with your bike and just making your way around?
Get a really good bike case that you trust. I have a hard case, and so I can, it is a little annoying to fit it in vehicles and stuff, but I have that sense of security with the bike. I never think something might happen to it. So invest in a good case. Definitely plan ahead. Know if you're going to rent a car or a vehicle, know that it's going to fit your bike case. Hotels are fairly accommodating there. They understand the cycling culture. So it's really easy to travel there with a bike. And in fact, some of the places we stayed, they had bike rooms and, places with tools and you can wash your bike. So that was really awesome. So it's just a very easy place to travel with a bike, I would say.
Okay. Lydia, GFNY has always been sort of a what I would call a learn-it-all organization. So with so many races in Europe this year, most of them concentrated in France, what is it that's going to color your thinking going into those plans for 23, 24 that you've learned this year? What are your big takeaways from the calendar this year and how it's evolved?
Well, to Jill's point, I really liked your looking at how the Europeans, I would really bulk them if you're looking at like from an American point of view, coming into Europe. Like the really big eye-opening for me is really the cycling tradition that exists in Europe. Gran Fondo started in Italy like 50 years ago, and we as GFNY follow the Italian Cycling Federation's rules that established racing for amateurs in a marathon. We obviously also fit the Cycling Federation and any other like federation we work with in the application of their respective rules as well. But in spirit, when we started year one, when we wanted to create a cycling race in New York, when we said there's already a marathon, there's triathlon, there's swimming, there's so many other things, but there is no cycling race. And we just looked at where does like Gran Fondo come from, Italy. And obviously having the mountains in France, having the mountains in Italy, in Switzerland, and being able to have like European cyclists, drive to all of these races has really like made cycling a very natural sport in Europe and a very historic one, and kind of apply this fundamentals and bring it to the Americas, because essentially when we started New York, we also saw so many events that followed us in Americas, where when we started, there were maybe not so many events that had a mandatory jersey, and now we see like a whole flock of events that now also have a mandatory jersey. And I think many that look at our rules and how we operate and also follow this. And we also didn't create this. We did follow the Italian Cycling Federation and that legacy, the history behind it. And really, they've developed so many best practices in that. And that's why part of it is, Jill, when we have GFNY Italia back, and I know you were there last year, I'm sure you also remember, like, the racing is really intense. And even if I race in Italy compared to even with France, the Italian Granfondisti are really an amazing experience, because to me they're like the most experienced Gran Fondo cyclists in the world. When I'm in an Italian peloton, the Italian guys know how to ride with women, take care of the women, lead them. So I know from just like a woman on a bike perspective, racing in Italy is second to none in the Gran Fondos, and France is providing incredible destinations and courses that are so majestic. And I think following a lot from the things you see from the Tour on TV, and France being the world's #1 tourism destination, it's really like a magic picture book where you can almost pinch yourself, wow, I get to ride in this.
That's amazing. It's amazing to learn all of that and to be able to pack that all into what's coming up. Cedric, as a racer, how do you look at those courses? How do you, when you see the challenges of those courses, do you think to yourself, boy, I'm glad I'm not racing this? Or do you think, boy, I really wish I was racing this?
You talk about me for races, is that? Yeah. But it's for me, it's it's totally different. I was cycling for Gran Fondo a long time, but the most challenging, if you want, is always doing a beautiful race. Take part of the race, take your best, personal best on after. It's with the calendar of the French, you have different things to do on. With almost, if you want, almost 4,000 kilometers climbing in in Grand Ballon, for example, because it was the last one. It's always challenging for a lot of people or for cyclists to finish it, to give the medal at the end on for some cyclists, because the level is I think in Europe, like Lydia said before, in Italy, the level in Europe is higher for the front of the race. It's different. Yes, so you have the people is coming for the win the category, win first the overall, or for the female of the male. But after you have these people is coming on, it's very challenging because it's very for everybody. I think the most important things is finish the race on with the best, on maybe come the year after to do best time like this, or just finish. I think is that when you saw the race like Tourmalet, because you know Chris, but on Gilles, on is for a lot of people who had just finished. On when I saw people so proud to finish, maybe at the end of the classment, on the legs is up, and everything was so unbelievable. It's a challenging for everybody. Is that the things for me, like a racer, yeah.
And Chris, to answer your question, Cedric is a top tier racer. So without a doubt, always. Also myself, I love racing. If we can race or organize, we would always want to race. But we also organize. And I think the really, really cool part is the passion that we all have to organize these races, because it is hard. And it really would not be possible without the passion that we put into it. And Cedric is really someone who has 100% passion. When you're at a GFNY France event, from start to finish, in the middle, and everything about it is 100% passion. And it just like screams at you how much love, how much care was put into these races. So I'm really excited. I get to do my second GFNY France race this weekend. I'm gonna do it. I also did Cannes, and there are really spectacular experiences. Also, like Marie said in the last panel, where you really feel like a pro because of so many motos, making sure that you're safe. The safety of GFNY France is second to none. The number one thing when we see that people are finishing the race and they're posting on Instagram, A to Z, incredible organization, thought of everything. And this is something that you really, it's not every race is like that. It's really special because Cedric and the whole GFNY France team put so much care into organizing these events and making them really beautiful, special things.
Excellent. And so speaking of beautiful and special, let's just talk a little bit about where these races are. GFNY has always had a knack for finding places that you really want to go to that aren't just, the things that you read about in the Rick Steves book, but they're places that you might not ever see. But once you get there, you think to yourself, boy, I'm really glad I'm here, because this is a beautiful place. When I think about Vaugeny, it was a town that I had never heard of before I went there. And now every time I can't get to sleep at night, I think about that waterfall that rocked me to sleep every night that I was there in Vaugeny. And so talk, Lydia, if you could, about that. How do you, there's so much on there aside from cycling, right? Of course, we're all here for cycling, but you've always had that in mind, that people will want to go and discover other things. And then when you're done there, Jill, just maybe talk about some of the things the non-cycling things that you discovered while you were in France.
So I think first and foremost, we do look for a destination that makes sense from a cycling perspective. Can we plot a course? Is the course attractive? Is it worth it? Because it is so important that you're not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to ride my bike, but it's actually going to be fun, challenging, and make this like dynamic element that like makes you want to go. And if you make it something that isn't attractive, people aren't going to come, and it's also not something that inspires us. So when we look at courses, we're really making the conscious decision that it has to be making sense from a cyclist perspective. The course fun, windy roads, interesting, challenging, and not just like, I don't know, forced or uninspired or something where I don't understand why are we here. And with that, we take also into account that there's more to just the cyclists themselves. There is their family, their supporters who are with them on this journey. And I know when I was pregnant, I went with Uli for races, and there's some races that he really wanted to do, and the courses were great. And I would just sit in the parking lot and just, go like, how much longer am I going to be sitting in the parking lot? Because it's so boring. And it's part of the whole experience that you want to do more. You want to be part of the GFNY weekend. You're arriving early. You're seeing friends from far and near. You're making new friends. You want to test the course. You're really making a trip out of it. You've been training for so long. You've been preparing, made all these plans. And it's really not just about you. It's also your supporters who are coming with you and want to have a nice vacation and enjoyable time, and not just sit there and wait and pass the time until can we leave now. So it's definitely the tourism experience is really important.
And Jill, your discoveries along the way?
So I was very fortunate in that I did sort of, as Lydia said, I came early, I stayed after the race. So I did have time to do things besides bike. And I definitely recommend anyone who's going to travel to one of these races, please factor in some days that you can explore by bike or just by foot and be a tourist, because all these races are in amazing places. And so I went to 3 of the France races, and each place was very different. So the first one was Lourdes Tourmalet, and Lourdes I didn't know this when I went there, but it is a Catholic pilgrimage site. And so it's a very walkable town, very touristic in great ways. And it has that huge sanctuary there. So GFNY had actually organized a town of the tour, or a tour of the town. And I got to take part in that and learn the history, walk through the town, and really sort of deep dive into that local environment. And that was very special and cool. So that really didn't have anything to do with biking, but it really made that experience in that town fantastic. And then Vaujany was very different in that it's like sort of a ski town, and it's not very it doesn't have that religious history to it, but it has amazing, beautiful nature. And so I was there and I just biked and biked and biked every day, and I explored, and there are just so many mountains and little ski towns that you can go up to. Everyone's cycling there. Like everywhere I went, there were cyclists. So you go down, you have coffee, you see other cyclists, you go up another mountain, have more coffee. It's just amazing. And then Grand Boulogne was very different in that it almost felt more like I was a French citizen. It's not really a touristic town. It's just people live there. They have their everyday lives. And it was so cool to see that after being in 2 very sort of touristy and then like the ski town. So where I was staying in Grand Boulogne, it was neither of those. And so I felt like I could just kind of walk around the town, go to the bakery every morning, just kind of almost be like, I'm living here in France and this is what my daily life is. And I wake up and I walk to the bakery and then I ride my bike. And it was so fun. I loved it.
Excellent. So so in those 3 races, so you did Lourdes, you did Lourdes Tourmalet, you did La Vaujany, and you did Grand Boulogne. So out of the 3, which was the most challenging for you?
Honestly, I can't say. People ask me, oh, what was your favorite climb? Which was your favorite race? What was the most challenging? They were all challenging for different reasons. Of course, the climbs were challenging. Grambalon definitely had a lot of climbing, and it was just constant. You know, it wasn't like 2 big climbs like the other races or 3. It was just like climb, climb, climb. So that was really hard. But the other races, you know, we had weather to contend with. So one day was super, super hot. Beaugeny was very hot, and Lord Tourmalet, it was just kind of like my first race there. So that was challenging because it was the first and I didn't know what I was getting into. So I really can't say one was more challenging than any other. They were all very challenging.
Okay, so where to next for you, Jill?
Right now on the calendar, New York is next. I mean, I know there are lots of other events between now and then, and you know, I haven't planned anything. I'm totally open to it, but like on the calendar, booked, ready to go is New York.
Okay, and then Lydia, for Europe, Uppsala will happen in 2023. Tell us a little bit about what that race is going to look like.
It's going to be end of the summer, so we're actually heading into like the really fantastic weather for cycling. Really cooler in the morning, still sunny and dry in the day. It's a dry season, and really comfortable. The hills are relentless. I would say they're just rolling hills. There's never a straight, never a flat. You're either going left and right or up and down. And that's kind of the most beautiful aspect of this course is the roads were not chiseled into the nature. They were actually laid in consideration of the nature. So when you're cycling, you really feel like you're part of the nature surrounding you. And it's never really like it's forced. It's you've got lakes. There's 100 lakes that you ride by, and the most breathtaking natural scenery. One of the really most incredible things, this is a 100-mile loop, 160-kilometer single loop that you do. One of the most incredible courses that we have in the GFNY calendar, where you basically head out and do this grand loop. A lot of it is in the footsteps of Linnaeus, who is a scientist. So there's like little also posts that explore the science and history of his botany. And let's see, I think like a great end of season before the fall starts. And it is still challenging because of all the hills that are happening. And it's going to be really, really fun. So I think a really unique experience. Scandinavia has been a really great country that loves GFNY. So definitely already like a good amount of GFNY families going to be joining. And Uppsala has been also incredible because the amount of support that they're bringing to help to make this race possible. I mean, the variety of departments that are working to bring the race. The let's see, the incredible tourism destination, in that it's the 4th largest city in Sweden. So you have lots of hotels, lots of great restaurant options. It's a really, really attractive place and very easy to get to because it's only 40 minutes away from, actually not even 20 minutes away from Stockholm Airport.
Okay, so then what can we expect? This is something that may be a question that everybody has on their mind about Sweden, about Uppsala. I have no notion of what the seasons would be like in Scandinavia. So for that time of year, what would the weather actually look like?
I mean, it gets to be still warm, like a summer warm. But at the end of August, it's, getting cool overnight. And, when you're that far north, the days are long in the summer and very short in the winter. but we're still at the tail end of summer, so we've got a good amount of sunlight, and I think it really an ideal temperature for racing. It's definitely not going to be too hot, not like summer boiling, but it still can be warm. End of August being that far north.
Okay, so in the Southeast Asia panels, the Southeast Asia organizers and the My First GFNY panels were both talking about how to use the geography of Southeast Asia to work your three-timer medal. So for 2023, right, because there's plenty of opportunity to still get your 2022 three-timer medal, even if you haven't raced yet. Cedric told me yesterday I've got plenty of time to get to Vosgeny if I need to. So for 2023, what's the Europe pattern? Do I get two? Do we think it'll be Lourdes, La Vosgeny again, Cedric? What's the calendar looking like for next year, or can you tell us yet?
The calendar looks like almost the same if you want. Next year. Cannes on Villard-de-Lans is already open, the registration. Cannes is last Sunday of March. And the same for Villard-de-Lans is last Sunday of May. And after we work for the date for Lourdes-Tourmalet, because Lourdes-Tourmalet will be happen. I keep the date, but I need last confirmation, but will be happen 11 June. And after I work with Vosgeny, I'm in Vosgeny for that too, very early to prepare the race, of course, and to talk about 23. Maybe we will have a race in Vosgeny, that's for sure. But yeah, maybe a little change, but I will keep posted everybody about that. But if you want, I work for Vosgeny. Well, maybe a new things challenging, some things different, I don't know yet, but after we have Grand Ballon will be happen too. For the date is around the 9th July. I try always to have the same date each year. It's very important, I think. And yes, you have Cannes, Villard-de-Lans is you can make your registration now, Chris, if you want. And Tourmalet will be announced this September normally. The same for Grand Ballon. And after, yes, I will work with Vosgeny. I try to make some things very, very great. After, if you want, in Alps, it's a lot of event too. We need to find the better solution. I have a good news for good date very, very soon. You will see.
Okay, well, I've got unfinished business in Lourdes because I did the medium this year. So I definitely think that I will be back there to try and see if I can actually get around the whole course.
Well,
But
you did the Tourmalet.
I did do the Tourmalet.
Yeah.
So and I did not put a foot down until I got to the top. Well, I put a foot down to zip my vest because I'm kind of a spaz and I can't zip and climb at the same time. So sorry. But thinking about that last year, this year, I actually thought, boy, it would really be something to do the third Sunday in May in New York City and then jump on a plane right after and go right to Villard-de-Lans. But I ran that by somebody and they said, hey, I'm all for crazy, but that's a lot. But I think it can be done. And then if it's the Lourdes Vosgeny combo, that could get you 2 out of 3. So you could actually work your way around France pretty easily, especially if you take a little spring break. For anybody from the New York City area, and this was something that I proudly announced at the first group ride that I hit in New York City after returning from Cannes, was that for that time of year, if you're training for the New York City race, Cannes is the place to be at the end of March because you can have beautiful climbs, beach, sunshine, and you can actually get ready and test yourself for that level of climbing and that level of challenge that you'll see in New York City, although the climbs are a little bit more predictable in Cannes. So we have about 10 minutes left. Lydia, any other places that you want to take us to that we maybe haven't thought of yet?
No, I mean, I see, people signing up. I see, for example, some crossovers, also Uppsala and France races for next year. So I think there is a natural slam dunk way to get 3-timers medal with all of the French races that we have on offer. I think definitely exciting new destinations in the works, but I think it's hard to talk about them until we have actually races to talk about. Lots of work, islands talking about, and we'll see.
Okay. So you're still building the calendar, and we all need to respect that. But it's my job to see if I can poke and prod and get you to spill something that you probably shouldn't spill. So that's just the way that I work. So Jill, any parting thoughts from you about advice for travel, advice for how to bring your A game to GFNY Europe?
Well, my general advice is go do a race. It's an amazing experience for all the reasons we've talked about. And I actually do want to kind of confirm what Lydia was talking about that passion. That was one thing I really got to see and feel because I was there for so long, and I did travel with the team, and I saw what they did and who they were. I talked with them, and there's so many people behind the scenes, like you have no idea, and they all have so much passion. Like it's an incredible experience to be around people who absolutely love what they're doing and are doing it to help other people have an amazing experience. So definitely if you do these races, you're going to feel that. And my biggest advice is you want to come out of it feeling successful, however you define that success for you. So really, please do start planning months ahead of time. Don't do this last minute, like, oh, there's a race in a month, I'm gonna train for it and go do it. No, you really need to plan ahead. So make your travel plans, start training 6 months ahead, and if you do that, you will have a fantastic time, and you'll want to repeat it.
Awesome. And was there any one highlight, just one thing, one takeaway, one gem from that entire trip?
So many, but one that is coming to mind right now is just biking down the mountain and being stopped by sheep being herded up the mountain, and just watching as they pass me with the dogs and the sheep herders. That was pretty cool.
Well, the good news was that you had enough of a lead in that race to be able to enjoy it.
But that happened on training rides too. And one day it was sheep. The next day I was being herded with cows. Like it was really fun.
Okay, I'll ask you a challenge question that Uli asked me that I told him when he asked me it wasn't fair. Pyrenees or Alps?
Yeah, that's really not fair. I'm sorry. I don't think I can choose. I really can't. They're both amazing, and Alps they're great because those are like the iconic climbs, so many, and you can just go and hit so many of the Tour de France climbs. But Pyrenees, I felt like there were some sort of hidden gems there. There are lots of great climbs that maybe like you take the side road and it's maybe a little less good pavement, but it's also equally beautiful.
Okay, and Matthias says Vosges. So, Cedric, how about you? Pyrenees or Alps?
For me, it's impossible to tell you some things about that because, yeah, I work for my race. Each race is very beautiful for me. Pyrenees and Alps is two things totally different. If you want, yes, like us said, Jill, if you go in Vosges, you can make 10 most important climb for the Tour de France or for everything in Alps. But in Pyrenees is sometimes different. It's more nature, it's more wild, like you say, you have a cow on the middle of the road, so you have it's just different. After the mentality is different too. For me, I can't tell you, but it's two things totally different. I think for everybody, you need one time to go in Pyrenees and one time to go in Alps is very important, because you need to, you can ask everybody. Yeah. After, I think for everybody is maybe the climb in Pyrenees is maybe more difficult, because when you climb the Tourmalet, it's all straight. You have no turn, it's nothing, and it's maybe more difficult. But yeah, it's different. It's totally different. After, you have the Vercors too. It's very close to the Alps, but the landscape is totally different. It's totally beautiful. It's, yeah. After, I can tell about Vosges because it's my own.
I would say that if I had to answer Uli, which he just said exactly to your answer, so whatever I say now is going to be wrong, so I'm okay with that.
Chris, for me, it's the Alps. I've done the Pyrenees, I've done the Alps. For me, it's the Alps. I love how developed they are, and I like the length of the climbs. The Pyrenees just don't go that high, so the long climbs, the spectacular views you get to the top of, like a mountain that's 2,500 meters high, and it just opens up to peaks that are like, above that, and they're just incredible views. For me, you can't compare. The Pyrenees are wilder, and the views are also really special, but for me, Alps. And the good news is, though, you can do GFY Lord and then GFY Vosgeny, and you can get to do both within a week apart.
Exactly. So you're 2/3 of the way there. I would say that probably for me, the Pyrenees, while the Alps are longer, I'd have to say that the climbs in the Pyrenees were more difficult for me. But I'm riding at a whole different level than the three of you. So like I called the article, the steady diet of 9.5%, that was a really difficult thing. But I would have to say, from a scenery perspective, there was something very, very moving about the Pyrenees. I don't know if it was the wildness. I don't know if it was the level of sophistication was different with the animals everywhere and whatever else. But it was something unlike anything I had ever seen before, and I think that was sort of magic. It was a place that I was actually, well, I'm always bummed to leave one of these trips, but I was really bummed to leave that one. But maybe that's because I knew that I should have been in the Alps instead of back at work that following week. So, okay, we're coming up on time. Any parting shots about the calendar from any of you? This has been a really great discussion.
I have a parting,
please,
a piece of advice. If you are looking for an incredible, life-changing experience, an experience so that you will cherish and fondly remember, and are looking for something that 10 years from now you're going to look back on, say, oh my God, I did that. I am so proud of that. I am so proud that I was there and finished. Come and do GFNY in Europe, France or Sweden or any other races. They are put on with great passion. You're part of the GFY family. When you're at the race, you feel the love, the magic of everybody being part of it and having these beautiful, spectacular courses. There is nothing like it. You're making these incredible life memories. Don't miss it. Don't say, oh yeah, there's next year, or I'm worried something, blah, because you never know. If now is the time, take this time and do something so incredible for you that it will be with you for the rest of your life.
I absolutely agree. When I finished La Vosgeny last year, I was dead last. They had to take down the timing equipment because of a thunderstorm, and the timekeeper was keeping it on her watch. And I sat, Lydia gave me some food, and I sat down, and I was thinking about eating, and I was thinking about the shower, and Machi came over to me and, congratulated me. And he said, "You look like you might cry." And I said, "Yes, I'm going to." And he says, "Okay, I'll leave you alone." So that's the kind of life-changing experience that it can be to finish something like that, something that you never ever thought you would or could do, to just go and do it. So thank you all for making the impossible possible, which is what GFNY does every day. We so appreciate you joining us today, and we will be back in about 5 minutes to talk about the GFNY NYC race with a distinguished panel of Uli, Cedric, Magnus, and we will be back in, and Hannah. So we will be back in about 5 minutes. So take a break and we'll see you there.
Thank you.
are back. Welcome back. That's the GFNY helmet, which is just a great example of how the GFNY organization is always innovating. So this year, finally, we were able to have the 10th edition of the flagship GFNY NYC race this past May. And I think that that's worth talking about. So we're going to devote some time to that, specifically why the GFNY race has just a little bit of everything, something for everybody. It's got climbing, descending, flat out hauling, and most of all, it's got big city panache. I myself have called it the toughest and most cruel course of all the GFNY races, although I think I probably came up with that before I got to the Alps. So I may be able to back off on that. But of all the GFNY races that I've tried, the atmosphere here pumps you up, and the course challenges you in new ways, no matter how many times you ride it, no matter what level you ride it at. So our guest for this, let's bring in Uli Flum, founder of GFNY. Cedric Haas is back with us, France organizer. But in this context, more Monsieur Bermountain and GFNY challenger and contender Magnus Wistrom is with us again. And GFNY podium finisher Hannah Fandel is back with us again. So let's start with this. We'll just go around. What is it that makes GFNY NYC or the course so? Fill in the blank. Use your word for what you think of when you think of this course. It's unique, challenging, frustrating. What is it that gets you going about the course? Uli, maybe you go last because you're in the unique position of having designed it but never actually raced it. So maybe Cedric, we'll start with you.
Yes, but I know GFNY signed since 18 for my first participation to New York City. Yeah, it was I think my example is I saw one day a video on Facebook on about this race. New York City is a race. What can I be? Looking so nice, And after during the winter, I book all my travel. And for this first edition was maybe the first impression is the bridge, the start at the bridge, because it's extraordinary. It's totally different, like all the other part of the Grand Fondo I did it because I did a lot of Grand Fondos a few years ago. And on this one, the atmosphere for the bridge is totally different. You have just on the most impressive bridge on up of the Hudson. After doing the race, I never expect this race was so challenging because it's a lot of hill, not so long, but very oozing. And I did it this race two times, 18 or 19. And I was for my first part of organization this year in 22. And when I saw, like me, I finished totally finished because it's very challenging routes. And when I saw the people, what's the first or the last one, everybody, yes, it's a big challenging to finish. And the race is just amazing. You start on so close to the big city of the world, New York City, where you have a good climb, the wild and everything is something totally different for me and very, very challenging because you have the bridge, you have 5,000 people at the start, all the atmosphere, everybody from around the world. Yes, it's totally different. And for my first participation, I was a little bit afraid about the jersey because every Grand Fondo you can wear maybe something else, but I was always afraid, jersey maybe it's not good. And when I take my jersey, when I saw the quality and I was on the start, everybody with the same jersey, that is amazing. That is a things totally different, and I understand better the things now. And if you want, is everybody with the same jersey at the same place for the start. It's just amazing. What's my feeling?
Okay, and Hannah, how about you? What would be the word that you would use to describe the GFNY NYC course with all the racing that you've done now?
I think the most beautiful thing was really that there are so many people from all over the world and that I could speak so many languages. I could speak I could use my Spanish skills, my French skills, my Italian skills, my little Italian skills, my English skills, my German skills, and I met so many people, and that was really nice. Yeah, I think that and there you can see that cycling and racing connect so many people, and regardless of their origin or their background or their fitness, and you can talk to everyone every time, and especially the day before the race, you could speak with so many people. It was really nice. And on the top of that, the start on the George Washington Bridge in the fog was really mysterious, and this was a really nice experience.
How you had a really impressive performance in finishing second on the podium this year. So what were your big takeaways about racing that course? Like, what were your strategies for that race day? And how much were you able to stick with that plan? How much did the course surprise you and keep you guessing?
Okay. At first, I was a bit surprised that the roads in America were not so good and that roads in Europe are much better. And I had a really bad problem with my chain, which dropped 5 times. And therefore, I think the next time I would check my bike better before the race. And normally I race with another bike because I have a team bike, but I was a bit afraid to take my team bike by plane to America, and because I had another race the week after the New York race, and therefore I was a bit afraid that there were problems with the baggage and so on, and so I took my own bike, and I rode only 3 times before the race with it, and there was no issue, but at the race I had bad luck, and there were some issues with my chain, but it was okay, and I was really satisfied with the results.
Okay, Magnus, you how did the race meet your expectations after you found it while you were doing your writing and research in 2017? You had mentioned that you were a little surprised that at how challenging it was. So tell us more about that first impression and what you came away with.
I mean, first, I've been to New York a few times before, and I really like the city. So, I mean, it was just great to come there and to enjoy the city and being able to do this cycle race. And a few days before the race, went down to Central Park and do some laps around there. It was just amazing. And then, as already said, I mean, the start at the bridge there, I've never been to any cycle race with such an amazing start. It's just mind-blowing. And also going from the hotel this very early in the morning, we took the bike down to the subway, and then we took the subway up, and we're biking the last part up to the bridge there. It was a really cool experience. And then the race, I mean, as already mentioned here, I mean, it is a very challenging race. It's all constantly up and down, and when you're on the bridge there and you're about to race, I mean, you get your horns out and you're so excited. So, and I was maybe a bit too excited and going very hard for my ability, and had to pay for that in the end. So, I mean, it is a really challenging course for sure. And you mean you have to be prepared for that.
Okay, Uli, 10 of these now, and they've evolved over time, right? So in 2011, it was maybe not exactly what you wanted. but it was a way to get started. And then by 2013, you were able to evolve it into the type of race that you wanted to be. So how have you? You always say that when people ask you what your favorite race is, you say, "Don't ask me to pick my favorite child." But as this was the OG of GFNYs, tell us your thoughts on how it's evolved and how you keep learning from it.
Well, it's evolved a lot. You said in the beginning it was not the perfect race that we wanted because it was completely new in the US to have a race like that. So to tell the police will have 5,000 riders on public roads gonna race for the win was like quite a stretch, and many had scenarios of massive accidents. They've watched the tour, they said accidents of 200 riders. How is it going to be with 5,000? We're going to overwhelm the hospitals, all of that. So that we had to do timed climbs in the beginning. So we timed only 4 climbs. But after already the first race, we already had, right away at all the intersections. So riders didn't have to stop ever at all. I said, I think we're ready. I think they can see it's safe. We can start time to finish. And still 2012 was a little too soon. And as you said, 2013 was the time when we said, okay, but now it's time. And we approached again the governing bodies and police and said, okay, can we make this actual real Gran Fondo instead of just doing this time climb thing? That is not what people want. That's not what we want. That's not what a Gran Fondo is. Let's do it for real. And they're like, all right, okay, that's fine. They saw us work 2 years, saw us work well, and gave us, the confidence to do it. And we did it. And ever since, holding it as a real race. And I think this being the Euro panel, I want to really look at this race from the European perspective to say, what is a European rider thinking what GFNY is in New York and what it actually is? And I think Cedric already said it really well. It's very different from what you get in Europe. It's also what Hannah said, how international it is. And that is something that you need to experience to really believe it, how cool that is. Of course, if you go to a big race in France, you get, people from Benelux, people from Germany, and now from the UK go to the race, but you will never get people from almost 100 countries come to the race. You will get very few Latin Americans come to race. And if you've ever raced with Latin Americans, you know that a race with Latin Americans is a lot more fun right away. And it's a lot more competitive because they're great to race with. So just to get that in New York, that is the big thing, that if you say, New York doesn't sound like a place I want to go, it sounds like a lot of industrial areas, big city racing. That's not for me. You're completely wrong. You're really completely wrong. You deprive yourself of an amazing opportunity to get a completely different race. And I see some go into this with arrogance and like, how hard can it be? It's New York, what is out there mountains? No. You look at Bear Mountain, what is that? A 10K climb with 5% average? Who cares? That's easy. And then really do the race and get surprised how hard it is. That Bear Mountain is just one of the climbs, and we always call it the Ardennes Classic of the US. It's really like a very hard race. And it's also very hard because of the level of racing that we have there with the top riders at the front. So if you come in as a European and think you're going to own it, give it a shot. Obviously, if you're good, you should try it out. And I've loved seeing our European champions, people like Hannah, giving it a shot and winning France and then going to New York and see a completely different race and experience that. So, we've come a long way with that, but it's also our riders who've come a long way with us, coming from all over the world and broadening the horizon of what is New York. And you don't have to sell New York, but I think racing in New York is something that really adds to your experience, to a trip to New York that everybody has to do at least once in their life.
Yeah, and I would say that GFNY was the first time that I had experienced that Gran Fondo format in its purest form. 2014, I remember looking over at somebody and saying, why do my legs hurt 35 miles into this race? And he said, because we haven't stopped for a red light yet, which I had not realized, that all of the intersections being controlled. That was not something that I went in knowing. And so that really sort of opened my eyes to what a real Gran Fondo was. Cedric, you've had a number of highlight reel performances in the New York City race. Tell us what's going through your mind when you go off the front the way that you've gone off the front in a couple of those instances.
After a race, it's sometimes totally different, like I always believe. But if you want, with the start with so many people, and for my first time, my start was, I don't remember my choral, but not at the first position. It was 7 minutes after the first one start. I wait. I can start because so many people. After was so so strange because I organize all the trip and I prepare a lot. This race was my big goal during this year, and I try to do my best to see the front of the race, and I continue, and I can explain. It's a feeling. Is when you are alone or with a little group in a breakaway on this race with all the moto. With it's special for European people. Have I don't know what I can explain. A sheriff on the Harley Davidson. And it's a lot of things that make so goosebumps because you have the direct online, direct live in Facebook, or the family can see you make some things as another part of the world. And yes, it's a feeling, an indescribable feeling. And if you have the Bear Mountain, the first rider is unbelievable too, because the atmosphere at this first aid station on the finish line for the medium is just amazing. That is for me a lot of energy, you know. But it's just a feeling extraordinary feeling about that. Yeah, when I think about, I have a goosebump. Serious.
So Hannah, what were your impressions as far as when you got up Bear Mountain in this past race where you came in second? You got up Bear Mountain, and then you got down Bear Mountain and started to understand that this is where the hard work was going to start. What was your plan at that point, and what did you have to do mentally to stay in the game?
Yeah, if you want the second time, because
that's what
Hannah, I think you're on
the question.
You're on mute.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. When I just hope that my chain didn't drop again. That was the first thing mentally, and then I tried to find a good group and to motivate the group of men, because I was the only woman in this group, and we tried to motivate each other, and this was really amazing to race and talk with again with people from different nations, and to ask them why they are here and what their goal, and and just we have to go to work together, and that's a good feeling to find people and to motivate each other, and
When did you realize that you were contending? When did you realize that you had a shot at the podium?
I think I already realized when we were riding into the start of the top mountain, because I saw that Samantha, the first woman, was just before me, and I knew that there was no other woman despite of her. And then I had to stop again because of my chain, and then I knew that I got second, and
So Uli, back to you from the race director's seat. What are the patterns that you see unfold during the race, and what are the things that surprise you and think to yourself, wow, I really didn't expect that?
Well, it's getting more competitive every
first my hotel was just in New Jersey, and so I could already train the first 30 kilometers or 60 or 40 kilometers, and so I knew already the first part of the race, but I didn't knew Bear Mountain, the climb, and so I was really exciting about this climb, and it was really cool, because I think the first 3 kilometers or 4 kilometers everything was okay, but then the fog started, and it was really mysterious to climb the last kilometers in the fog, and especially the descent was really mysterious because I had no lights on my bike, but there was so much fog, and maybe it was a bit sad that we had not such a great view from the top of the Bear Mountain, that the feeling of this fog, of this mystery, was great as well. Yeah. I think you're muted.
I am on mute. Sorry about that. And then Uli, back to you again. So the things that you see from the director's seat as you're hanging out the sunroof of the car and you're watching, what are the things that really surprise you? What are the things that you just see over and over again every year?
There's not that many surprises at the end of the day in terms of how the race evolves. And it's funny, my driver is usually Jürgen Benecke. He's a former downhill World Cup champion. He knows racing very well. We used to race together on the road back in the days, and we would always have like, oh, there they go to, attack to get first to Bear Mountain, just like Cedric Haas, and we're like, another one that then get reeled in later. And it's just a story every year that some people get excited and right off the front, and it's a very long race, and we know that Bear Mountain is just the beginning of when it gets hard. And this year we had the same. We had 3 guys lead out and get up Bear Mountain and strung out and got one by one to the top. And the big peloton of all the favorites, 100 riders, they stick together until the bottom of Bear Mountain. And then the real racing begins. And that's when we really see who's going to come over the top in the first 10 riders. That's usually who's going to play for the podium at the end. This year we had a very strong Italian who was out with them, with the leaders, and stuck with all of it all until the very end. So that was very impressive. He didn't win the race, but he did very well. But this is sort of like the pattern of the race that you can see. It's like moderate, like very hard up Alpine, sort of like if you can lose at Alpine, you can't win at Alpine. Some people going out the front, 2, 3, 4 to Bear Mountain because they're excited. As Cedric said, all the cameras, all the motos, the excitement, you can't stop. Cedric is one of those riders, and I can relate to that. I'm not at Cedric's level or I've ever been, but just like to get a chance to attack, I would have done that. Totally, who cares about tomorrow? Let's go out now and see what happens. And then the others who are, have done the race, have heard about the race, know that before Bear Mountain, it's a lot of flat riding, a lot of group riding, and saving energy, and that the race really begins then. So that is the pattern. And, people who are new to the race, who are not competing for the win, which is the majority of the riders, they keep learning by hearing before they go to New York how to you really do this race, and that Bear Mountain is not the middle of the race, even though by miles or kilometers, it is more or less the half. We say it's 1/3, the first third of the race is actually Bear Mountain. The next third is the other hills, and the last third is after the hills, going back to the finish. A section that cannot be undervalued at all. That looks easy after you've done all the climbs, but then the miles, add up, and then even the small kickers that come at the end, they're going to hurt a lot. So for riders that are new to the race, they want to come study the course, study the course, study the course. And you said at the beginning, I've never had a chance to race that course. I've ridden it a lot, and I think I would need 5 races to actually nail it because it's one of those races you cannot nail it the first time. You need to go back and go back and go back. And that's what makes it attractive to me. If you have a race that you can figure out right from the gun, that's not interesting. That is not really what a race makes it. But this race, because it's so relatively easy in the beginning and then all the difficulties in the middle, and then it's not like just flat rolling to the finish, makes it a really tactical and race where you can burn out yourself very early. And that applies from the first to the last rider and makes it super interesting, fascinating, and a racer's race, and not just a course you can tick off.
And we've seen it humble some racers in a big way, and we've seen, I think, probably a lot of people that have done it a few times talk about the mental toughness that you need as you get over those climbs. Magnus, I'll ask you, when you got through the big climbs, your first time doing the NYC course, what was your state of mind in maybe trying to find a group and trying to sort of hang in there until the end? Were you counting the kilometers to the end, or were you feeling pretty strong?
Coming up to Bear Mountain, I was in good shape, and then going down there, we formed a small group. We were maybe 8 cyclists trying to sort of get organized, helping each other, yeah, and we're talking to each other. Oh, we should go below 5 hours, and we were really pushing each other and trying to help out. But yeah, as Ulle said here, I mean, it's after the Bear Mountain it gets really challenging, and somehow people start to drop off from the group, and I was dropping off when it was like 20K left or something, and I was completely done. So yeah, I need to do it once more and do it properly and next time, because yeah, I really suffered in the end there. So it's a difficult race to pace yourself correctly when it's this constantly up and down, and so yeah, it is a real challenge in that way, and it's good if you ride the course a few times. I mean, to get used to it. Yeah.
Thank you, Magnus. So, and I have to say the 5:15 time that you posted in 2017 was very, very impressive. I think probably it's sounding to me like we should have T-shirts made up that say, "Yeah, it was all great until after Bear Mountain," because that seems to be the mutual experience that everybody has is sort of figuring themselves out after Bear Mountain. Cedric, any thoughts about the mental toughness that you've had to build to do a race like GFNY NYC?
The mentality things you mean?
The mental, the thinking, how do you think yourself through?
If you want, yes, it's like everybody on Uli told, it's a race on the finish is so hard. But if you on the mentality, I think is that need to be just a goal with a good preparation, and you can make a beautiful things. It's challenging for you yourself, or just challenging for the result. But just for that is yeah, for the mentality is just good preparation on everything. On at least is yes, it's New York. It's a big one. It's a beautiful course, on the mentality come almost alone. But yeah, it's a ways to can give you a lot of strong mentality things for do it.
Cool. Thank you, Cedric. And then the travel piece of this, right? So getting to New York City, it's an international peloton because people come miles and miles away to get there. So tell us about your travel experiences. Hannah, I'll start with you. What was your travel experience like? Was that the first time traveling a long distance to do GFNY in New York City this year? How did you go about that?
Firstly, I tried to find a friend which could travel with me, but unfortunately, there was nobody with time. A lot of friends had to work and or study and so on. And so in the end, I had to travel alone, and therefore it was not so easy. Really, because of the bike, you have to book extra baggage, and it depends every time on the plane, which I flew with British Airways and American Airlines, and they have different conditions, and that was really complicated. But at the end, everything was okay. And then I had to come from I had to reach from New York Airport and the hotel, and it was quite far away. And then I called a taxi, and that was okay. But it was a bit challenging to manage all things alone, especially with a bike. And but in the end, it was really cool because it was the first time I was in America and the first time in New York. And I think if I hadn't participated at the New York at the Grand Fondo, I wouldn't have traveled to New York in the next years. And so I was already there 3 days before the race, and so had some time to discover the city, and it was really amazing to, yeah.
Yeah, I think we forget that New York City is a travel destination outside of bike racing. We're so focused on the race. So,
Yeah.
And Magnus, you had mentioned earlier that you had been to New York City before. So, Magnus, over to you. Tell us about what your travel experience was like. Do you travel with your own bike? Do you have any thoughts, or I always refer to them as hacks that you use for traveling with your bike?
Yeah, I had my own bike with me at that time, and yeah, I mean, check up with the rules. Taking a bike with you on the with whom you're flying. I mean, there are different rules for different airlines, and for some you have to pay, some it's for free if you don't have any other language, other baggage or something. So yeah, check out the rules before you book anything. That's something you can take with you. And yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's any problem traveling alone to a GFNY event. When we got to New York there at the hotel there, I mean, it was crowded with cyclists that gonna show up for a GFNY. So I mean, it was easier to go along and meet other cyclists there. So that was also really cool there.
I would say probably, and Uli, you could break in here as well. But my biggest tips for traveling to any GFNY are always check out the GFNY hotels first, because they usually have great proximity to the course, as well as offering good rates for those things, and also they understand why you're there and can aid you in storing your bike. Uli, any thoughts on travel that you have especially for the New York City race?
Yeah, I think storing a bike is big. Our bikes are expensive, so we don't want them in some storage room without a luggage. And that's what we make sure at GFNY, that if it's a partner hotel, they allow you to bring a bike on the room. Something I always want. We've had enough stories of people, even if their bike didn't get lost in the storage, but the storage was closed at 5 a.m. when they wanted to go to the start, and they couldn't get to their bike. They couldn't do the race. And in general, I think I hear a lot of people ask, "Oh, when I travel so far to New York, I don't want to bring my bike." You have to bring your bike. I think, we do offer rental bikes, but New York obviously is not a cyclist destination in general. So there's not a fleet like you get it in Mallorca, where there's like high-end bikes ready for you for a fairly affordable price to rent. So the bikes that you get in New York, they're quite expensive, and they're like really basic road bikes. So if that's fine for you, then that's fine. But I think, riding on your own bike is always the best experience. It's you're used to it. It's the perfect size. You feel the best on it. And you owe it to yourself, I think, if you go for a trip that long, to be on your own bike and experience this race on your own bike, just also to get the best performance out of yourself. And Hannah mentioned that she had some issues with the travel. After having traveled for 20 years with bikes around the world, it's getting easier and cheaper by the year to do this on a plane. The airlines are used to it. More people are traveling with a bike. When I did that 20 years ago, it was completely uncommon that someone traveled with a bike. Nowadays, we have big airlines that say it's your bike, doesn't matter, just bring it, and it's going to be counted as normal luggage. So if it's within our weight limit, and the American airlines, the big ones, have really generous weight limits, you don't pay anything extra. You stuff some extra stuff in your bike box or in your bike bag, and off you go. And if you don't want to buy an expensive bike box, a good carton box where the bikes come in that you get in any shop is good enough. You just tape it well and get everything around your frame, some stuff, and then that's safe as well. It might be done after the return, but that's not a problem. So you get another carton box. So I think travel is much easier than it's feared for many people. And I often ask, because it's the European conference, to a rider who's at our European race, "Hey, why don't you come to New York?" And they're like, "Oh, that's too far." My first reply is always, "Well, you don't have to swim there. You can take a plane." And then we get to like the issues that people have with it, and there's really a fear that is not warranted, and it's a lot around the bike and the transportation of it. And again, as someone who's done it routinely, just like you, Chris, over so many years, once you've done it once, you see that it's not that difficult, and then you ask yourself, why haven't I done that before? So we help with that. We have travel guides. We have a lot of information on our website. Email us if you have problems, and we get you to New York. And it's last year we counted 97 countries. We're still to break 100 for this race in New York, but you're not going to be the only one traveling. As Magnus said, you go to that, you get to that hotel, and you are not the only cyclist. You're not the only GFNY rider. The city even is humming full of GFNY cyclists. So you might be alone getting on that plane, but once you're there, it's all of us.
But I still bring my own foot pump. I just do it.
I have a travel foot pump. That's a good thing also. Yes, I have one that's a little smaller, packs good. That's like also pro advice. So you don't have to do the hand pump or hope that you find someone who has a pump. I see that a lot. So I think we have this packing checklist also from you, Chris, somewhere on our website, and people should check it out.
Yeah, the packing thing is sort of an art form that takes into account all of the things that you'll need in terms of battery chargers, in terms of what to bring in your carry-on. I think Frank Lee in the Southeast Asia panel this morning made a really great point about the things that you'll need on race day, just in case some piece of luggage is delayed, that the things that you'll need on race day, your helmet, your shoes, your bike computer, whatever, you pack those in a carry-on and you take those with you so that you don't have to buy anything if something were to delay any other part of your luggage. If you have that and one kit, you can probably race or find a way to race. But also, it also requires just a little bit, not much, mastery of assembling and disassembling your bike. But most of the modern bike cases really make it very easy to disassemble the bike. And one of the, Uli, you did a video a few years ago where you just showed how easy it was to pack your bike into the Elite Borson case with a little help from Superman. And anybody that wants to watch that video, maybe I'll close out this panel with that video so that we can all see it. But packing your own bike is definitely one of the things that makes the journey a little bit more special. Any parting shots from anybody about the GFNY NYC race? Anything, Uli, that you wanted to cover?
I think Lydia said it earlier. Now is the time to go out and get an experience like that. I think COVID taught us a lot. One of the things it definitely taught most of us, for sure, also is that time is limited for us. Time is short. Time is of essence, and there's a lot of opportunities we didn't have for 2 years that just went missing. And 2 years is a long time. We're not going to be in that health forever. We're not going to have the same life situation forever. Don't delay things. If you see opportunity opening up to go out for an experience, just like racing in New York, go for it. Really, go. Don't wait for perfect. Perfect is not going to happen. If you wait for perfect, you're never going to get it. Dive in head first, commit to something, and then live for it, train for it, prepare yourself for it. Ben said it right. Jill said it right in the panel before. The way to do it, it's a lifestyle. It's a lot of other people doing it, and you owe it to yourself, and bring your family and get that great experience. And you can do all the other things you keep doing all the time, again and again. On a later stage, they're easier to do, but sometimes you have to get a little bit out of your comfort zone to get to the next level and experience something that's actually worthwhile thinking of, instead of going for the 10th time to Mallorca and all the years start blending in. So go out, go to Asia, go to one of our amazing races there. We're in the European conference. And maybe for me, the closing thought is that I won't forget at the race in Bali, I was before the pandemic, and I was in the pool after the race, hanging out with an Indonesian rider. And he's like, yeah, you guys have so many races around the world now, right? In exotic locations like Chile, for example. And he said that to me in a straight face. And I was in this exotic location in Bali, under a palm tree in a swimming pool in 35 degrees while it was freezing in Europe and in North America. So, what's normal for you is exotic for someone else. So go somewhere else where someone else is at home, and they can show you their home, and maybe the other way around is happening for them the following year.
Right on. I mean, I was just thinking to myself that New York City is not exactly exotic for me, although the course is just as challenging as it was the first time I set my wheel down on it. But that's probably why I love to travel to Europe so much, which is why I was just so happy to be able to host this panel. Anything else from anybody? Cedric, Hannah, Magnus? I just want to say thank you to you guys for spending so much time with us today. And thank you for participating in GFNY and being a part of the GFNY family and the most international peloton in endurance sport, right? I mean, I don't think there's anybody else that can top us on that, right, Uli? I think we lost
Cycling.
Uli. Uh-oh.
No,
Okay.
here. Cycling. No. Running. The New York City Marathon is more international. I think they get about 120, 130 countries because it's running. Running is easier, but cycling, we're dominating that still.
All right. Well, someday we'll be dominating running too, maybe. So he said as he prepares for the Florida Marathon. Okay, so
And
thank you.
I must say, welcome to Sweden and Uppsala next year.
Will you be at Uppsala, Magnus?
Yeah, for sure. August next year.
Of course.
Okay. Maybe I'll see you there. Or I might be in Vojany with unfinished business. I don't know. So we'll see. Hannah, what's next for you?
For me next week, I'll be racing. I think 4 days a stage race in Italy, in the Toscana, and yeah, after that I'll do a gravel race in Italy as well. Yeah, and yeah.
Okay, and then will you be back to New York next year, do you think?
I still don't know because
Okay.
I study medicine in Germany, and next year I work a lot, and so I still don't know if I can travel a lot. So yeah, let's see.
Okay. So we'll have to call you Dr. Podium winner.
Yeah, maybe.
No. Okay. Well, thank you all. I think we're gonna stop it there, and we've really enjoyed this Europe panel. And I just want to some takeaways from the entire Europe panel. Just the Uli's point about don't postpone, because you never know. And I think that there's so many great opportunities to do so many things. The Europe calendar is not only thriving but growing. And the New York City race is something to aspire to. It's always challenging, and like Uli said, probably 5 times, and you still probably won't master it. I know that I had my best turn on it the first time I did it, and I've been trying to get back to that ever since. So those are the big takeaways from today. I just want to thank everybody, and I will leave you with a little bike packing to close things out. Thanks very much for being here, everybody.
Thank you.
Au revoir. Merci.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Today we're gonna pack a bike in the new Elite Borzone bike bag, and I got 2 helpers here. Are you ready to pack the bike?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So this is really easy. I've done it once only. I'm not sure I need them. Maybe it's actually going to be harder with them, but you'll see how it's going to get done. I've done it once before, and it's very easy, but this is not going to be a polished video that you get from Elite where it like shows quick how it's done. You see someone doing this who's done it once before, you see if it's really easy. First step, we're going to open the bag all the way. Open it all up and spread it open so we can get the bike in all the way. We prepare the bike a little bit in advance. All you need to do is take the pedals out, take the bottle cages out, deflate the tires because they like that on the plane, and put the saddle in a little bit. I don't think this is Lydia's bike, it's a little smaller. We need to do that, but we'll see later, we can do this later. So now we take the wheels out. All right, now wheels out, front wheel out, rear wheel out. Now we can place the bike here. Place this on this here in the middle. This is flexible, it moves until we screw it tight. So it's sitting here.
off.
That's basically it. Next step is already just putting in the wheels.
Okay.
We got 2 of those wheel bags, and the cool thing about those is they actually fit 2 wheels. So you can even bring, if you want, 2 sets of wheels. You open it up completely. These are the protections for the wheels. Gotta take the whole thing out. In on one side, on the other side, through the wheel. Snap the Velcro. You can put it here for 2 wheels, you snap it in, but we only bring 1, should be enough. In here, Velcro over. Close it. Unfortunately, at the end we had a little bit of an audio problem, but thankfully we have Superman. Superman made it work. There wasn't much else to do. We had to put the protection on the handlebars, wheels on the side of the box, of the Elite box, and then close it up, and that's it. Took me in total, I think, 12 minutes. Really love this box, makes it much easier for the traveling if you don't have to spend an hour to pack the stuff. I got 2 bikes to pack. We have a double stop, so good stuff. Elite Boson, I love it.